All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. This is Dr. Ephraim. Today's date is December 12th, 2022. And if you listen to the sound of my voice, that means you were blessed to see another day by the Most High God of Israel for now and forever. All right, welcome, everyone. Welcome all my new subscribers. Um, if you're old, new, or like, please remember to hit the subscribe button and hit that notification bell and select all so you'll be notified every time I upload a new presentation. All right, I want to thank everyone for your continued support. Please continue to like the videos, comment, and share them. That all helps in the viewership, man. They still have my channel suppressed with views, man, but we're gonna try to keep pushing through, man. That's very frustrating. I'm not gonna sit there in front because I mean, you got people channels with 500 and 600 subscribers getting all the 70 and 80,000 video views, and they're not going to tell me that they don't have some kind of block on my channel, man. I mean, really, it's frustrating as all get out. But anyway, man, today what I want to talk about, what I wanted to bring forth, what does the Bible say about polygamy? I get a lot of questions, believe it or not. There's a lot of comments on this, a lot of debates, quote unquote. I mean, when you look at something like polygamy, I mean, because clearly, in the Bible, there are men of God that had several wives, particularly, Solomon, who allegedly had all these wives, concubines, whatever. I think King David. Um, but as far as the children of Israel in Torah, right? Remember, I told you, as children of Israel, we have to really go by what Torah says. And Torah is very explicit in who should not have multiple wives, right? Now, as Christians, that's a different thing. Again, um, but even from the Torah and New Testament perspective, whether you're an Israelite or a Christian, um, some of the scriptures are based on what interpretation, right? So again, now I don't know if there's any scripture verses explicitly um, anti-polygamy, as direct as it is in Torah for the Israelites. Well, we're gonna get into that, but I think when it's all said and done, I mean, hopefully at the end of this lesson, you all have a better kind of understanding about it. I think it really boils down to preference. And let me say this before I start the lesson. See, the thing about New Testament Christians that the Romans or the Greeks, whoever put in there that you have to kind of abide by the ordinance of man. See. Technically, as an Israelite, that shouldn't apply to us, right? But here's why we can't ignore that because of where we currently live, right? Like we're not on sovereign land. We're not a sovereign people. We can't afford to say we're not going to listen to the ordinance of man, right? We can't afford to say that because we don't live in our own land. We don't make our own laws. We don't have our own constitution. Y'all get what I'm saying, right? So that being said, we have to, abide by the laws of the land by which we, are living. And so polygamy is against the law here in America. So you can't have multiple wives or multiple husbands legally. Now, could you have some type of agreement between multiple men and women to call yourselves husbands and wives without the paperwork? Sure, by all means. But from a legal standpoint, you're afforded certain rights legally when you're legally married to someone here in America. You're afforded certain rights as a husband and as a wife that you don't get if you're not, quote unquote, legally married by the paper. Now, personally, I've said this before. My opinion is if you're exclusively um, committed to one another, without paper, and you're not, going outside of that, yeah, I believe that in the eyes of God, you're married, right, without the paper. That's how I personally feel. Now, whether that's right or wrong or whatever, that's my personal opinion, right? We're gonna get into the lessons, go over some scriptures, and kind of dig a little deeper into this whole polygamy thing, and see what we can uncover. And like I said, hopefully at the end of this, you all can have a better a more solid understanding of what's allowed and what's not in terms of having multiple wives, multiple husbands, even, right? All right, so let's get it. All right. Now, off top for the children of Israel. because again, our laws, statutes, and commandments are in Torah. What does Torah tell us about polygamy, right? And again, keeping in mind that, we live in America, man. We can claim Israelite, our heritage, but we're not living on sovereign land. So we have to abide by the laws and, in the government, we have to abide by the laws here or where we live. So keeping that in mind. But for Israelites, the Torah is explicit, and it says that in Deuteronomy 17 and 17, it explicitly states that a king is not to have many wives, lest his heart go astray. Now, that's very clear, right? And Exodus 21 and 10 says it requires a man who takes a second wife not to deprive the first of food, clothing, and sex. And if he does, the first wife is released from the marriage. And I see that's interesting. As I'm reading that, I'm getting there's a scripture and verse in Quran that kind of says the same thing about polygamy. That it's allowed if you can treat each woman equally. So it's a trip how y'all don't know just how close the laws of the Ishmaelites and the Israelites are so similar, being that we're both people of God or whatever. But that just kind of stuck in my mind. That's what the Quran says about polygamy, that you have to treat them all equally. So for us as Israelites, Exodus 21 and 10 says we can't we can't take a second wife or more if we can't treat them equally by depriving of food, clothing, and sex. And if we do, the first wife, she's released from the marriage. All right. And it says the Bible also prohibits a man from taking a wife's sister as a second wife. These laws indicate the Bible's acceptance of polygamy to an extent, right, while also seeking to circumscribe it. So what this means, real quick, we're gonna kind of deal with this. Deuteronomy 17 and 17 is that, first of all, majority of Israelite men will not be kings, right? So you would think that from that standpoint, Deuteronomy 17:17 says kings should not have multiple wives. Well, the average Israelite man is not going to be a king. So we can infer that that doesn't apply to the average Israelite man. Again, it's all about interpretation, right? Because for us, it has to be any law, statute, and commandment by the Most High God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He is explicit in what he wants us to do, what he doesn't want us to do. And he's very clear. He speaks clearly, especially when he's speaking in first person. He's very clear in what he wants. So there's no explicit language that I know of in Torah that speaks to the men of Israel not being allowed to have multiple wives. As I said in the beginning of the lesson, I really think it really boils down to preference, number one, and two, the legalities of where you are, what country you reside, right? I mean, polygamy is, I'm sure, legal in some countries. We happen to live in a country where polygamy is not legal, and only not legal from the standpoint, like I said, you can't get a marriage license for more than one person. As from a New Testament Christian perspective, they say that the man should have one wife. you know, even from the standpoint of the Most High bringing man and woman together, Adam and Eve, and becoming one flesh. Well, you can't become one flesh with many wives. So you can infer from that that monogamy is our ideal, right? But again, it's not explicitly stressed. And again, and even for New Testament Christians, it said that the husband should be husband should have one wife, the wife, one husband. They stress that or whatever. So it said the patriarchs Abraham and Jacob had multiple wives, as did King David and Solomon. So it's implicitly sanctioned, right? But like I said, the implication of certain scriptures is based on interpretation as well, unless it explicitly says, specifically, we as Israelites can't do this or we can't do that. Like the law, statutes, and commandments for the children of Israel are very clear in Torah, right? Very clear. It speaks about same sex. It's abomination. To God, right? Like it's very explicit with certain things, certain sins, certain acts. It's very explicit. Like you don't have to infer anything. It's telling us, what's what. And there's really, so from that standpoint, there's really no inference. There's no interpretation when we're being told directly and specifically from the Most High God what He wants us to do, what He likes, what He does not like, what He accepts, what He will not accept. Y'all follow me? So, from that standpoint, that's what we have to go on. Now, the first account of a couple in the Bible seems to establish monogamy as the ideal. Like I said, Genesis, God created Eve, a man's rib, gives him to her as his wife. Then he says, therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and cleave unto his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Right? Now we know you can't. Now first of all, that scripture and verse is spiritually one. You can't mathematically become one. You can't get two out of one. We know that mathematically that's impossible. We know that. But when we're talking about, a man and woman coming together as one, meaning it's spiritually one. It's mentally, it's emotionally. It's when the Bible says, can two walk together except they agree? No, they can't. That's why you have to be compatible with each other. Right? You have to be equally yoked. That's what the whole equally yoked means. Being equally yoked doesn't mean that your marriage is going to be perfect, but it just means that you line up with the things that matter most to the Most High. You line up spiritually. You line up emotionally, mentally, right? You line up. You're one. You walk and talk as one, right? You have to be in agreement. That one represents the unison, the combination of man and woman coming together and being one. So you walk together. You walk side by side. The man doesn't walk in front of the woman doesn't walk behind the man. You become one. You walk together side by side. So from my personal standpoint, monogamy is the only thing for me. Monogamy is ideal. That's what speaks to my spirit. I'm not a man that needs his ego stroked. I don't need more than one woman. And I felt this way even when I was a young man. Monogamy is my thing. Like I said, I think it really boils down to preference. Because I've seen situations where men in, different countries, especially, like I said, where it's legal or not legal, where they have many women who come together and agree to act as quote unquote wife to the one man. And they're all in agreement with that. And they're grown and they made that decision. That's fine. But you can only be legally married to one woman in America. Now, whatever you agree with, whatever kind of contract you can make or write up between you and 100 women, and they agree to it, that's between y'all. Far be it from me to condemn anyone for doing what they feel. Like I said, as long as it's not explicitly denounced, right, in Scripture, and it's not. Now, like I said, now it is explicit for kings, but again, how many of us are going to be kings, right? And it doesn't speak to, like I said, to average Israelite men. So, it boils down to preference. It really does. Far be it from me to try to judge anyone on what they feel on doing what they want to do as a full-grown adult in their own sound mind, making their own decisions. That's between y'all. That's on y'all. If a man wants to go out there and get 5, 10 women who agree to live as his wife, but keep in mind though, man, with all these multiple wives come multiple responsibilities too. And that's why the Bible speaks of this. You have to treat them equally. You can't deny if you got 5 wives, you got 10 wives, you have to treat them all equally. Now, can you realistically do that from a sexual standpoint? You know what I'm saying? And all that. I mean, can you really forget the mental side of it, the a man being, yeah, I got like five, 10, I got like 20 wives, you know what I'm saying? Forget all that. That's arrogance. Can you really take on the responsibility of having multiple wives? Can you honestly say as a man, you can treat 5, 10 women equally? Come on, man. Let's be real. Let's be realistic with this thing, right? So, you know, the Bible also relates multiple instances in which the ideal is not upheld, right? Beginning in chapter 4 of Genesis, which relates to Lamech, a descendant of Cain, took 2 wives. Later, we learned that Abraham took a second wife, but I don't believe Hagar was really a wife. She was more like a surrogate, because Sarah didn't feel she felt she was barren, couldn't have any kids, she couldn't conceive, so she approved that he could basically lay seed with Hagar. He didn't really take her as a wife, At least I don't interpret it, Hagar as a wife, because if Hagar was his wife, there's no way that the Most High would have had him send her and Ishmael away if she was his wife. Because in the eyes of God, when you have a wife, you have certain responsibilities attached to that, right? And this is not to say that because she was a, quote unquote, she was basically a surrogate, that she was less than, but being a surrogate, even under the approval of your wife, does not make her by virtue your wife. You understand? So, and clearly clearly God sees it the same way, because he told her to listen to Sarah. He told him to submit to Sarah and let Hagar and Ishmael go, and he would take care of Ishmael. Don't worry about him. Y'all understand? Y'all following me, right? So even with Israel, Jacob, Leah and Rachel is said to have been his wives, right? And Bilhah and Zilpah was supposed to be like the surrogates, right? But it's ambiguous though, because like I said, when it comes down to scripture, man, it has to be explicit or inferred explicitly. And then even then, sometimes we have to interpret it. So it depends on who's reading it, who's interpreting it, right? So anyway, um, when we look at it, says later in the Bible, you talk about Solomon having all these wives supposedly. Um, and the Bible also requires the taking of a second wife in one particular instance when, say, if a married man dies childless, his surviving brother is obligated to take his widow as a wife to continue the brother's lineage, even if he is already married. See what I'm saying? An institution known as Levirate marriage. So in that instance right there, clearly polygamy is allowed. So what I'm basically giving you all the scriptures and verses and saying, my people, all my children, the children of Israel and all our sojourners and supporters, is that polygamy there's no explicit language against polygamy as an Israelite unless you're a king. Now, if you're a king of Israel, that's explicit. You should not have more than one wife, period, point blank. So from that standpoint, no, polygamy is not explicitly spoken against by the Most High, but it's not ideal, and it is allowable in certain situations. And also just keep in mind, that if it's legal, by the ordinance of where you live, what country you live, okay, great. But you have to remember, you have to treat those women equally. Can you do that financially, right? Mentally, emotionally, sexually? Because we know women need these things, right? I mean, so can you treat them all equally, realistically? And if you can't, then that should probably tell you you shouldn't be trying to look at having more than one wife. That's just my thing. So anyway, I'm gonna leave it there. I just wanted to kind of touch on this real quick. I don't know, maybe y'all got something from it. Hopefully y'all did. Me personally, my thing is I'm a one woman man. Monogamy is in my spirit. I don't need more than one wife, one woman. I get one good woman, I'm good. That's all a man needs is God and a good woman. You understand what I'm saying? So on that note, Dr. Ephraim going to sign off. I hope y'all enjoyed it, got something from it. And until next time, it's Dr. Ephraim signing off. All right, Shalom, elect.